All right. Good evening, y'all. I am your host, Brian Forbes. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Black Factor. And tonight, we're going to talk about a topic of misinformation. Something that happened historically, or let's just say they've used revisionist history to describe what we're going to talk about tonight. So we're going to clear up a few misnomers. We're going to clear up some misunderstandings, and we're going to put down the truth, because the Black Factor has the news you can use. And perspective is everything. So we're going to give some of that tonight, like we always do. All right, so let me get this thing kicked off right quick. And I want to start off by making sure to tell everyone, do not forget, hit the like button. You got Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Periscope, Instagram, YouTube, and you can subscribe to any one of these. Hit the like button, smash the share button, and all that good stuff. Make sure you hit your notification button so every time we come on, you'll know that we're here. Don't forget you can catch us every Wednesday, simulcast on Oh So Smooth Radio at 7 o'clock. Same bat channel, same bat time. Download the app at your Apple store. All right, so an interesting little fun fact on today, February 5th. Interesting little fun fact. And this is, something that just kind of occurred to me while I was doing this tonight. Before I get into that, we're going to go ahead and get the show cranked up and get this thing off the ground. Y'all hang tight 1 second here. All right. All right, Tracy Cisco, I see you. I see you in the building. Thank you for hanging out with a brother, Miss Martha Williams. My cousin is in the building. I like it when my cousin come hang out with me. That's one of my favorite cousins, y'all. Anyway, so check this out. Friday, February 5th, that being today, because it's Black History Month, and y'all know this is the Black Factor, so we're going to do Black History stuff like we always do 365 days a year, however many days it is when you take out the extra ones when we're not on for those 3 days a week. Anyway, little interesting fun fact, y'all. So today being February 5th, every day during Black History Month, I've decided that I'm going to be announcing birthdays for the day. Well, it occurred to me, this being, I think, the third day that I've done it in this month, it occurred to me while I was doing this that the only time, because of course I'm only pointing out black people because it's Black History Month and this is the Black Factor. Every time I look up or try to find people, black people, whose birthdays are on the particular day of the show, I notice that the only way and only time I'm able to draw any down is after 1900. So I'm sure there are probably some in the 1800s that might come up somewhere in the future, but I just find it interesting. I actually saw one today that went all the way back to 900. I think it was BC. No, it was AD. I'm sorry. Anyway, it was an Asian guy. But my point was this. When you talk about Black history and you start really putting it into perspective and you think about what's really going on, you have to ask yourself, I mean, we already really know the answer, though. Like, how is it that for 1,000 years we could trace back everybody else? Certainly for at least the last 500. And all you see are Caucasian faces and a few other nationalities, but no blacks, no Africans. I think that's really interesting. I have to get all the way into the 1900s before I find notable black people. And I think that is a bit disturbing. But then, we all have to remember that a lot of black history was omitted, which is partially what we do in these shows about this month, about the omissions of blacks in history, which is a reason why there should be no such thing as black history, because we should already have been included. But since we've gone so far out of their way to exclude us, we have to then re-include ourselves, which is what I do here. You would think that we didn't exist prior to colonization and slavery. Anyway, on this day, 1934, Mr. Hank Aaron, who just recently passed, I think last week, may he rest well. And the Kang of R&B, not the king, the Kang of R&B, Bobby Brown, birthday today, 1969, and Adrian Johnson, 1974. She's a WNBA player, played 8 seasons. Then there's Omarosa. Well, she ain't black. Well, maybe, I don't know. She got her Negro, I'm being politically correct, wake-up call from Donald Trump here recently, so. Anyway, I don't know what we call her. Anyway, she get an honorable mention, I guess, because of her skin color. You know what they say, all skin folks ain't kin folks. Anyway, I'm going to begin tonight by making the point that, and this is a fact, slavery is not black history. I noticed that there's always a lot of focus put on slavery and how we got to where we are and how things are moving about. However, let's all take into account that slavery is not black history. It was simply an interruption of black life on a different continent. And in fact, some on this continent. Burma Johnson, how you doing this evening? Thank you for checking in. Valencia Johnson, Hugo, thank you for checking in. Deanna, I see you. And my mom-in-law, y'all. You know, there was an interruption of life for people of color globally, and in fact, the indigenous of this particular land, being North America or the Americas, period. The barbaric and the greedy captured what amounted to doctors and lawyers and politicians, fathers, wives, priests, husbands, sons, brothers, mothers, daughters, hunters, mathematicians, teachers, kings, princes, and princes. That's who they brought to this land. And then, having come here, destroyed the lives of those who were indigenous to this land, the Americas, in the process. All for what? Greed. That's what it always amounted to, was greed. And violence was always used in order to achieve the pillaging, raping, and pillaging of this particular continent and the genocide of groups of people across the globe, by the way, not just in the Americas. Anyway, one of the things that we're going to talk about in particular tonight is about a misconception of a particular historical artifact. That being the lawn jockey. Now, you're probably thinking, why are we going to talk about lawn jockeys? Well, there's a reason why we're going to talk about lawn jockeys, because it's actually a very important topic, because it's always helpful and important for us to know our history and why things are the way they are. It makes it so much easier when we navigate through this world and we deal with our counterparts who think they know so much when in fact they know so little, which is why they behave the way they do most of the time. But much like the Confederate flag, this is subject to revisionist history. And for those who don't know, I'm going to put this out there. That flag that you see these guys riding around, these racist cats riding around in they big old 10-foot pickup trucks, flag flying from the back out the bed, that is not a Confederate flag. That is a made-up version of what the Confederate flag actually looked like. Now, that's another story for another day, which we may cover one day, but the fact is the Confederate flag did not look like what you see. So that became, because it was readopted in the 50s as a symbol to notify the world that the South was still salty about losing the war and losing their slaves. Now, white folks will argue it's about heritage and all this other, but those are the ones who don't know their history and they don't know the truth, or they just don't want to admit to being a racist openly and outwardly, which is why they put on those little white hoods when they go out here and act a fool. So, anyway, Tracy Cisco says, I read a quote today that slavery is white history. How we rose above and overcome it is black history. That is beautiful. You are absolutely correct, and I agree 150%. Okay, so most of these people don't even understand, like, for example, the lawn jockey for many in recent years, and I say recent years, I'm talking probably in the last 50 to 75, maybe more, is a symbol of, we got a little paper and we don't like black folks. There's actually a song that was popularized in 1928. It was produced. Now, it was said that this song was a song of folklore, and it was one that was created by slaves, which told of how to escape to freedom. Now, the song was called Follow the Drinking Gourd. The drinking gourd is reference to the Big Dipper. If you look up in the sky, I don't know how many of you are familiar or have done it before. A lot of people have. Some people haven't. But if you look up in the sky, you'll see something that looks like a big old pot or a dipper, a water door. Anyway, it says, follow the drinking gourd. And that way you'll never become lost. Now, if you don't, and I'm gonna tell you that song, the song, there are several versions. You can actually check those out on YouTube. I didn't realize there were so many, but there are several versions of that song. It's actually kind of a interesting song, but it's code. It references the lawn jockey, which is what we call it now, but it was not. The term wasn't lawn jockey back then. Anyway, it says that it would carry them to freedom by following the drinking gourd, which would be freedom, of course, from bondage. Now, a couple of the lyrics from the song go like this. When the sun come back, and they broke it all the way down. And this refers to the winter or spring, when the sun comes back, when the sun is up most of the time. The days are getting longer and the angle of the sun is higher each day at noon. The next verse is when the first quail call. And that refers to breeding season of quail. Quail in Alabama start calling to each other in early to mid-April. So they're telling you that this is the spring, basically, when the sun is high and the quail call. That lets you know that's the best time to make your move. Then it says, then the time has come. Follow the drinking gourd. And the drinking gourd alludes to the hollowed out gourd used by slaves, which, that was something that they used to drink out of, as a water dipper. And that was code for the Big Dipper, star formation, which points to Polaris, which is what we refer to as the North Star. Then it says a couple of choruses follow the drinking gourd. Okay. For the old man say, old man is nautical slang for captain or commanding officer. According to Parks, the Underground Railroad operative Peg Leg Joe was formerly a sailor, and he was one of those who would get you across the rivers. Now, follow the drinking gourd. Then verse 2, the river's bank am a very good road. The first river in the song is the Tombigbee. Now, I don't know how many of y'all have been down to Tennessee and in those areas, but I have, and I've crossed the Tombigbee many times, which empties into Mobile Bay. Its headwaters extend into northeastern Mississippi. Then it says, the dead trees show the way. According to Parks, Peg Leg Joe marked trees and other landmarks with charcoal or mud of the outline of a human left foot and a round spot in place of the right foot. That lets you know he was Peg Leg Joe. Okay. Follow the drinking gourd. Now, verse 3. The river ends between two hills. The headwaters of the Tombigbee River end near the Woodall Mountain, the high point in Mississippi, and an ideal reference point for a map song. The two hills could mean Woodall Mountain and the neighboring lower hill, but the mountain itself evidently has a twin cone profile and so could represent both hills at once. Next verse, follow the drinking gourd. Another river on the other side. The river on the other side of the hills is the Tennessee River, which extends outward in an arc above Woodall Mountain. The left-hand side proceeds virtually due. Now, north to the Ohio River border with Illinois, definitely the preferred route, since the right-hand side meanders back into northern Alabama and then proceeds up into Tennessee. So it says, follow the drinking gourd again. Then verse 4 describes the end of the route in Paducah, Kentucky, where the Little River, when the Tennessee, meet the Great Big Un. And that means it meets the Ohio River. The Tennessee and Ohio rivers come together in Paducah, Kentucky, opposite southern Illinois. The old man waits. Now that's your little man with the lantern. Let me see. One of Park's informants, the Runaways, would be met on the banks of Ohio by the old sailor, that being Peg Leg Joe. Of course, the chances that Peg Leg Joe himself would be there to meet every escapee, as depicted literally in the children's books, are quite small. So, I'm not going to go too any further into that part. And the reason why, the thing is this. Along those roads, the jockey, or what we refer to as the jockey, see, because that's not what they were initially called. They were actually considered like hands or help for slave owners, okay? The role of the jockey was sort of to point the way, so to speak. Now, this was all part of the Underground Railroad. Now, each jockey pointed to or identified safe houses along the Underground Railroad. So as time passed after slavery, when you would see people with jockeys on their property or land, it was sort of a recognition that they didn't like slavery or the KKK. Most people were aware of this during this time. Again, revisionist history takes us to another place where it started to mean something else, like the Confederate flag. But they were used as markers throughout the entire South and all the way up to Canada. Now, for those of you who have not gotten your homework books yet, The Black Factor, you got to get your copy. In The Black Factor, when I wrote this book many years ago, I did put in here a very important part about the lawn jockeys. And I keep using that term. I'm going to give you the other one in a minute. I keep using that term because you have to you understand exactly what I mean when I say it. A jockey wearing a striped shirt meant that this was a location that you could swap horses. The true use of these things was misconstrued. Let me put it that way. We started hating them because of our, I guess you could call it hypersensitivity, but then again, not really, because we kind of when the narratives change, they're not afraid to let you know how they feel about things and tell you what they think about what you're seeing. Anyway, the lawn jockey is a little man standing in front of a house in horse riding apparel, which wasn't always the case, by the way, of different color schemes, holding a lantern. In fact, black footmen placed in front of homes was to signify that these were stops along the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad was a way for escaped slaves to run to freedom with the help of a network of whites and free blacks. A jockey wearing a striped shirt meant that this was a location to swap horses, while a footman there's the term, footman, with a tailed coat signified overnight lodging and food. A blue sailor's waistcoat was a place where they could get help reaching a port and a ship to Canada. In the statue, if the statue had a green ribbon tied to its arm, it meant safety, and a red ribbon meant to keep going. Now that since then I now revise that, because that is actually a concept that was developed into the 1900s, and it wasn't what was happening at the time. At the time, I found out they would have particular bright colors on the jockey and not ribbons themselves. The red-green thing is a later addition to the folklore. In later years after World War II, as Northerners moved to the South, many placed jockeys in front of their homes as a way to signify that they were in support of civil rights and against the Ku Klux Klan. So that gives you an idea how they were actually using these jockeys. Now, there's a funny, the footmen, there's a couple of stories behind these things too, because you'd have to ask yourself, how did these things come to be? How did it come to a place where this became the symbolism for people running to freedom? So every now and then they would put a flag in the hand of the statue, which also indicated safety, or bright cloth, or they would actually light the lantern. Now, some of them had lanterns, and if you pay attention to the way most of them are posed, they usually have a hand in a pocket, an arm out with either a ring, or they're holding a lantern, or the ring they attach the lantern to. But they were really used for horses. And this is why before they were called lawn jockeys, they were called groomsmen or footmen. They didn't have the same attire. All of that was a later addition to what these things were. Okay. And also, it wasn't for decoration. It was really, it served a purpose. Now, the thing is this: they've had something similar to this that go all the way back to Greek times, where they used to tie horses to make sure, they didn't run off. But in 1776 in particular, this is when the popularity of these hitching posts became more prevalent. And 1776 being an interesting year, of course, because that was the year that America supposedly gained its independence. But the thing is this: there were different variations of these footmen. Now, during that time, of course, in 1776, we had just come off of the Revolutionary War, and they were about to pin, or about to pin, but this was just prior to that, before they pinned got the Constitution and all that kind of stuff together, the Bill of Rights and all that, right? These original footmen statues, they were actually made of solid iron or zinc, and they weighed about between 300 or 400 pounds. These things were like super duper heavy. Of course, you need something that heavy to keep a horse from running off, right? And that's what it was. Now, the newer ones are made, they're only about 150 pounds, and they're made out of different things like aluminum and cast iron, concrete, plastic, that kind of stuff. And they're mostly, of course, they're used as decoration, because the reason why they ended up stopped using them, of course, because cars got invented. Once they invented cars, and they have no more use for them. Now, right quick, we're going to look at the original. Okay, this right here is a picture of, and it shows you 3 different versions of this statue that was used. Now, each one of these has a lantern on them. The first one in 1776, the Faithful Groomsman. Now, there's a reason why that's called the Faithful Groomsman, and we're going to get to that in just one second. The next one was the Faithful Groomsman caricature, and that is when they decided to dress up the groomsmen and put him in jockey gear. Now, if you remember on one of our last shows, it might have been the last show, we talked about black jockeys. We talked about how the jockeys and all of the Kentucky Derbies that were won by black jockeys that actually had been slaves and those who had come out of slavery. And so they decided to begin using that image as or that particular shape and dress of them. And then from there, they actually have some that look like the one all the way on the right, which is the lawn jockey. That's what it evolved into. And then they started doing them actually in blackface, of all things. Then there's the, let me see. Whoa. This was an ad to describe what was available on the lawn jockeys at the time. Now, this particular picture that I'm about to show you, it says The Legend of Jocko. Now, it says The Legend of Jocko for a reason. This is where the caricature or the image is said to have come from. Now, there's no documented history that specifically proves exactly this, where this came from. And the reason why is because it's sort of a rumor. Now, this right here is the original groomsman, faithful groomsman. Now, the reason he looks the way that he does goes into the folklore of where this thing originated in 1776. And that being, let me see now. Hold on, y'all. Okay. In 1776, 3 a.m., on December the 26th, George Washington's colonial army in Pennsylvania crossed the Delaware River. Now, I don't know. I don't know if y'all, how many of y'all have seen this actual picture right here before of George Washington. It's a famous painting, George Washington crossing the Delaware. Y'all know, we've all probably seen it in the history books. We've all seen it before. But if you notice up here, it says Trenton over there, Trenton, New Jersey, and Jocko Graves back over here. All right, this is 3 a.m. December 26th of 1776, right? Okay. Now, George Washington crossed the Delaware River and attacked the British at Trenton. Legend has it, now this is a legend, and the reason they're saying legend is because they don't have the actual receipts, if you will. In other words, it's eyewitness accounts, and it was never actually documented, and story was told by George Washington, so we don't know how true it is, but this is what supposedly happened. Legend has it, Washington's groomsman, see, the faithful groomsman, a 12-year-old slave boy named Jocko Graves, stayed on the Pennsylvania shore taking care of Washington's horses and was holding up a lantern to mark the location. So when they came back across the river, they'd know where they were going. In 1776, a groomsman referred to a man or boy in charge of feeding, conditioning, and stabling the horses. So basically, Jocko was over there chilling while they were going across the river to do their thing, and he waited for them to get back. Okay. Now, the legend tells of one more. Well, the thing is this. Recorded history says that 2 colonial army deaths in the Battle of Trenton, which was a significant victory for the colonials, But the reason for the casualties was that both of the soldiers actually froze to death while crossing the river and not in combat. Also, in that particular picture that I just showed you of them crossing the river, there is also eyewitness account that at least one of those soldiers on that boat with George Washington was actually black. But of course, that's not in the painting. They're not going to tell you that part. Legend tells of one more casualty, Jocko, who was found frozen to death on the Pennsylvania shore while still holding the lantern when Washington returned at noon on December 26th of 1776. Legend has it that upon Washington's return to his Mount Vernon, Virginia home, he was so inspired by Jocko's heroism, he commissioned a cast iron statue of Jocko holding a lantern and called it the Faithful Groomsman. The welcome or coming home theme of these statues started here. And with an ironic double meaning, coming home being also used as a metaphor for dying and going to heaven from Christian theology. The last name graves associated with the statue also offers a cryptic allusion to a cemetery grave. Was the original statue a grave marker for Jocko? Maybe. Taking into account that very few slaves had last names in colonial America, the grave marker explanation seems plausible. So, you wonder where the lawn jockey came from. You can thank George Washington for that one as well. Now, I got to thinking too, we were talking about earlier the green ribbon and the red ribbon, and it kind of made me think red light, green light. And then I got to thinking, red light, green light. No, I'm not going to talk about the kids' game. But it did make me think about another gentleman by the name of, wait a minute. Hold on, y'all. I got to get it together. Garrett Morgan, the inventor of the electric automatic stoplight and the gas mask. Now, we're not going to get too far into that, but it just made me want to throw that out there while we at it. You know, we can toss in as many of our elite thinkers as possible while we're doing this. So he's the one who popularized the red light, green light thing, popularized it, didn't invent it, popularized that. Although he patented this light, the concept for red and green as far as the ribbons on the footman is fairly new in comparison to the age of the faithful footman that we were talking about. So, you know, another interesting thing too, and I didn't know this, you know, Garrett Morgan sold a patent to that light, to the stoplight, to General Electric for $40,000. I guess that was a windfall back then. That was a lot of money. But doggone it, there's lights everywhere now. You know how much money his family would have been making today? Goodness. Now, part of the evolution of, you know, how things begin to change, things start to switch up as far as a narrative is concerned. There was a woman by the name of Helen Bannerman, and she put out a book. And I don't know if any of you have heard of it before, but I'm sure you should have. And it was a children's book. It was wildly popular. And the name of it was Little Black Sambo. So in case you're wondering how the attire for the faithful footman started to change, this is it. The faithful groomsman, footman, lawn jockey attire began to change. They started to paint all of these with, because this book, of course, like I said, was wildly popular, they began painting all of the footmen with, or groomsmen with this red shirt and blue pants instead of the, let me show you right quick, instead of the baggy outfit that they were wearing. See, this was the faithful groomsmen gear right here. And that's how you would see them prior to it being shown in another version, which I gotta find here. Whoa. I had a color one. I don't know what I did with it. All right, well, I'm gonna show you this one anyway. I'm gonna go back to this one. So on this one, you can kind of see where the attire changes. Now, part of the reason for the attire changing is because they went from the faithful groomsmen or footmen to becoming the jockeys. And so now they have them dressed like horse jockeys. So they kind of started switching that thing around. And of course, they painted them with the blue trousers and the red shirts, looking like jockeys. And that's how it evolved to where it is today. However, the history and the legend of the lawn jockey is one that deserves a little more recognition than we actually give to it, mainly because it was critically important to the freeing of many slaves. I think that, like many things, we have to really ask what the origins of some of this stuff is. And another interesting thing was, there was the guy who actually made or created the Statue of Liberty had come to America and was looking for inspiration to create the gift from France that was supposed to be the Statue of Liberty. Now, there's other legend that nobody seems to be able to prove, if you will. It's funny how they can't prove certain stuff. They can prove everything else, but they can't prove certain things that have come up because they don't want to prove them, because it would shine too great of a light on the situation where black people were concerned and slavery was involved. The company who made these lawn jockeys, one of them was called J.W. Fisk, and it was called the Faithful Groomsman Statue. Is supposedly related to the Statue of Liberty, which, by the way, was completed in 1886. Frenchman Frederick Bartholdi was originally commissioned to design the statue in 1865 as a tribute to America's independence, but the impetus was the abolition of slavery in 1865. See, this guy was actually an abolitionist, and he was the one who was designing the Statue of Liberty. Original Statue of Liberty designs contain broken chains in Lady Liberty's hand and at her feet. Now, I've seen sketches of the original, and she had broken chains and, some other things like that. Now, there's another version that they claim she was supposed to be a black woman at first. That has not been proven. There's nothing to prove it. Of course, we always know that they get rid of history when it doesn't fit the narrative. But anyway, originally the Statue of Liberty would have been depicted with chains rather than the book that she carries. The original statue was made from black materials, which turned green over time. So the original black silhouette of the Lady Liberty on a pedestal holding a light would have resembled the J.W. Fisk's Faithful Groomsman statue. While visiting New York, researching statue ideas, it's easy to see how Bartholdi could have gotten his slavery abolition idea for Lady Liberty from the only original American slave statue from J.W. Fisk's architectural iron catalog. The ultimate symbolic irony is George Washington's tribute to Jocko Graves during the battle for independence in 1776, possibly inspiring the Statue of Liberty at the end of slavery some 80 years later. Now, if you ever pay attention to the Statue of Liberty, you will take note that they still managed to slip in there a little something, something. A lot of people don't notice it's there and they don't pay attention to it. But at Lady Liberty's feet are chains, and it is broken. There's one that goes from the other side of the bottom of her dress to this side where you see the broken chain. So there was some hints in there. They don't want to talk about that part, though. They're not going to talk about that part. So anyway, just throwing that little history out there for y'all. So that's what we did today. Now, before I go today, I want to take this time, y'all. I don't know, some of you were on with me last week when I spoke about a dear friend of mine who had passed. She passed about a week ago. And it turns out that yesterday morning I received news that her husband, my very good friend, Mr. George French, has also transitioned on yesterday morning. Now, I just wanted to take this time because this is one of the guys who made a difference in my life in a lot of ways. He is probably the first dude that taught me how to drive a big truck. And he actually used to let me get behind the wheel of his truck, which, you know, that's a big thing. You know, if you understand anything about these things, you'll know that was somebody who trusts you. You know, this was a generous dude. You know, we had some real good times together. In fact, he would come by my house some nights and be like, hey, man, come on, ride with me to the casino. This was the only dude I ever seen in my life who literally could go in the casino. He'd be like, man, here go $50, man. Don't play them little quarter slots and them penny slots. I need you to play the dollar slots. Don't play that other stuff. And I'd be like, okay. He could go in a casino and be in there 15 minutes and come out with $2,000 or $3,000 in his pocket. And he'd always say, man, come on, I need to go get some money. Like he was going to an ATM. I never seen anything like it in my life. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. He knew how to play the machines. I don't know what that was about. I never could figure it out. I just never had that much luck. He would give me $50. Here, man, ride with me. We go down there and I'd spend my 50. He'd tell me which machines to play, and every now and then I'd hit something. But amazing dude. Now, he was also the loudest dude in the theater. You ever go to the theater and it's always this one cat talking to the screen? That was George. Yeah, and he didn't mind telling you how he felt about you, especially if you was of a different complexion. Talking about a man straight out the Mississippi Delta. You know, that was my dog right there. That was my man. He had the man code down to a science. He was a bad dude. And all I can say is I appreciate having been able to spend time with him and be around him and be in his life and have him in mind. He was real good to my kids. He loved them like he was their grandfather. You know, just a good man, period. They don't make them like that no more. It ain't a whole lot of him left in the world. So I said all that to say this show is dedicated to him, and it's going to be a rough one, y'all. So here's to you, G. That was my drinking buddy, too. We used to drink a lot together. Spent a lot of time hanging out. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be my time. I don't want you to forget. Subscribe to YouTube. Hit us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, Periscope. And don't forget, you can catch the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. You can even use your Alexa. Alexa. There you go. Google Podcasts and Radio Public, and check me out on Oh So Smooth Radio every Wednesday at 7. We're on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on all other channels and outlets. I appreciate y'all for hanging out with me. I hope I was able to convey a few things to you and teach you a couple of things about some of this revisionist history that we suffer from. So much of it out here. It always helps to know the truth. And if I didn't do anything else, I hope I planted a seed to make you at least pick up a book or flip through the internet and find this information for yourself. Because like I always say, don't believe me, check it out. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you all. I appreciate you. And we will see you all on Monday. I want everyone to have themselves a wonderful weekend. Cover up. Don't be like my man G. I ain't gonna say now. I didn't say that to say that he didn't cover up. He hardly went anywhere. He was retired. Him and his wife, and they both passed from complications of COVID. So if y'all think this is a joke, let me assure you, I've lost far too many friends and family members thus far to be playing with this. And I really don't know what it's going to take for the rest of the world to understand. But get your head out of your ass. Seriously. I know if he got this, it was purely by accident. I don't know if he got it or his wife caught it. But both of them are now deceased from complications of COVID-19. This is not a joke, y'all. This is not a test. This is not a game. Take care of yourselves and take care of your families. Even if you don't believe COVID is real, act like you believe it just long enough so that your own family don't have to die because you don't care. Because when you go out here and you walking around and you acting like this thing ain't real, just know that you could take it back to somebody in your house and kill them dead. If you're going to do it like that, hell, you might as well walk in with a pistol. All right? I want all y'all to have yourselves a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much. I love y'all. Thank you. Thank you. And we're going to get on down. Y'all love peace. Chicken grease.